Josh Shapiro. Joshua David Shapiro, born June 20, 1973, is an American politician and attorney who has served as the 48th governor of Pennsylvania since 2023. A member of the Democratic Party, he served as the 50th Pennsylvania Attorney General from 2017 to 2023 and as a member of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners from 2012 to 2017. Raised in Montgomery County, Shapiro studied political science at the University of Rochester and earned his Juris Doctor degree from Georgetown University. After that he worked as a senior advisor to Senator Robert Torricelli. Shapiro was elected to the Pennsylvania House of Representatives in 2004, defeating former Republican U.S. Representative John D. Fox. He represented the 153rd District from 2005 to 2012. Shapiro was elected to the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners in 2011, marking the first time Republicans lost control of Montgomery County. Serving on the board from 2011 to 2017, he held the position of chairman, and in 2015 was also appointed chairman of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency by Governor Tom Wolf. Shapiro ran for Pennsylvania Attorney General in 2016, defeating Republican John Rafferty Jr., and was re-elected in 2020. As Attorney General, he released the findings of a statewide grand jury report that revealed the abuse of children by priests and cover-up by church leaders. He also helped negotiate $1 billion for Pennsylvania as part of a national opioid settlement. Shapiro ran for governor of Pennsylvania in the 2022 election. He ran unopposed in the Democratic primary and defeated Republican nominee Doug Mastriano in the general election by a 14.8% margin. Early life and education. Shapiro was born on June 20, 1973, in Kansas City, Missouri, to a father serving in the Navy as a medical officer, and was raised in Dresher, a part of Upper Dublin Township in Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. His father, Stephen, is a pediatrician, and his mother, Judy, is a teacher. Shapiro is Jewish, and at a young age, Shapiro started a worldwide letter-writing program, known as Children for Avi, on behalf of Russian Jewish refuseniks. He attended high school at Akiba Hebrew Academy, now known as Jack M. Barak Hebrew Academy, and then located in Marion Station, Pennsylvania. Shapiro played basketball in high school and was one of the team's captains during his senior year. Shapiro attended the University of Rochester, where he majored in political science and became the first freshman to win election as the student body president of the University of Rochester in 1992. He graduated magna cum laude in 1995. While working on Capitol Hill, he enrolled at the Georgetown University Law Center as an evening student and earned a Juris Doctor in 2002. Early career. Capitol Hill. After graduating from Rochester, Shapiro moved to Washington, D.C. He started as legislative assistant to Senator Carl Levin, then served as a senior advisor to Representative Peter Deutsch, and then a senior advisor to Senator Robert Torricelli. While working for Torricelli, Shapiro planned foreign affairs tours in the Middle East and Asia, including a trip to North Korea. From 1999 to 2003, he worked as Chief of Staff to Representative Joe Hoefel, who represented parts of Montgomery County, Pennsylvania. Pennsylvania House of Representatives. In 2004, Shapiro ran for the Pennsylvania House of Representatives in the 153rd District. He faced the Republican nominee, former Congressman John D. Fox. Shapiro trailed in polling during the beginning of the race, but knocked on 10,000 doors and ran a campaign centered around increasing education funding and better access to health care. He was elected by a margin of 10 points over Fox. He was re-elected in 2006, 2008, and 2010. As a member of the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, he built a reputation as a consensus builder, who was willing to work across the aisle on a bipartisan basis. Following the 2006 elections, Democrats controlled the Pennsylvania State House by one seat, but the party was unable to unite behind a candidate for Speaker of the House. Shapiro helped to broker a deal that resulted in the election of moderate Republican Dennis O'Brien as Speaker of the House. O'Brien subsequently named Shapiro as Deputy Speaker of the House. While a state representative, Shapiro was one of the first public backers of then-Senator Barack Obama for president in 2008. This was in contrast with much of the Pennsylvania political establishment, which supported Hillary Clinton in the Democratic primary. From 2006 through 2017, Shapiro also practiced corporate law at the firm Stradley, Ronan, Stevens, and Young in Philadelphia. Montgomery County Commissioner. Shapiro won election to the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners in 2011. The election marked the first time in history that the Republican Party lost control of the Montgomery County Board of Commissioners. Shapiro chaired the board from 2012 to 2016. Shapiro's commission duties centered around social services and administration. Castor, the only Republican member of the board during Shapiro's tenure, praised Shapiro's work, calling him the best county commissioner I ever knew and very good at arriving at consensus. In 2016, Shapiro voted for an 11% tax increase, which was an average increase of $66 in property taxes. During his tenure, the Board of Commissioners implemented zero-based budgeting and shifted county pension investments from hedge funds to index funds. Democrats retained a majority on the Board of Commissioners in the 2015 election, as Shapiro and his running mate, Val Arkush, both won election. In April 2015, Governor Tom Wolf named Shapiro the chair of the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency. Pennsylvania Attorney General. Shapiro announced his candidacy for Pennsylvania Attorney General in January 2016. While he had practiced with Philadelphia's Stradley Ronan firm and chaired the Pennsylvania Commission on Crime and Delinquency, he had never served as a prosecutor. Shapiro campaigned on his promise to restore the office's integrity following Kathleen Kane's resignation and also promised to work to combat the opioid epidemic and gun violence. His campaign was supported by President Barack Obama, presidential candidate Hillary Clinton, and businessman and former mayor of New York City Michael Bloomberg, who was among the largest donors to Shapiro's campaign. He won the Democratic primary for Attorney General in April 2016, defeating Stephen Zoppala and John Morganelli with 47% of the vote. In November 2016, Shapiro narrowly defeated the Republican nominee, State Senator John Rafferty Jr., with 51.3% of the vote. Shapiro was re-elected in 2020, defeating Republican nominee Heather Heidelbaugh with 50.9% of the vote. He received 3,461,472 votes, the most of any candidate in Pennsylvania history, and outran Joe Biden in the concurrent presidential election. Tenure. Before Shapiro took office in 2016, the Pennsylvania Attorney General's Office launched an investigation of allegations of sexual abuse perpetrated by members of the Catholic Church. Shapiro inherited the investigation, and, in August 2018, released the results of an extensive grand jury report. The report alleged the sexual abuse of more than 1,000 children by over 300 priests. It prompted similar investigations in other states into the Catholic Church, such as an inquiry launched by then Missouri Attorney General Josh Hawley. In 2017, Shapiro announced the roundup of $1 million heroin ring under Operation Outfoxed in Luzerne County. One of those arrested was Mauro Catio, previously charged in a major bath salts case in 2016. All of the charges in Operation Outfoxed were dismissed after allegations that the Attorney General's office mishandled the sealing of wiretapped recordings. In January 2018, Center County District Attorney Bernard Cantona referred the case of the death of Tim Piazza, a Penn State student who was hazed, to Shapiro, because Cantona had previously served as a criminal defense attorney for one of the defendants. Multiple defendants pleaded guilty. In August 2018, Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner referred the case of the fatal shooting of Jeffrey Dennis by a Philadelphia police officer to Shapiro, because Krasner had previously served as Dennis's criminal defense attorney. Dennis was in his car when he was boxed in by undercover officers in unmarked vehicles. 3 officers were injured after Dennis tried to evade them. In December, Shapiro announced no charges would be filed against the officers, saying, violations of police procedure do not always rise to the level of criminal charges. Dennis's family subsequently sued the officer and City of Philadelphia for the incident. In 2019, Shapiro led efforts to ensure that insurance holders of Highmark, a healthcare company, can receive treatment at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center. The settlement allowed 1.9 million insurance recipients to continue using their existing doctors as in-plan providers rather than being forced to switch either medical providers or insurance providers. Shapiro was one of 20 electors the Pennsylvania Democratic Party chose to vote in the Electoral College for Joe Biden and his running mate Kamala Harris in 2020 United States presidential election. In 2021, Shapiro announced an opioid settlement with Johnson & Johnson and 3 other U.S. pharmaceutical distributors that resulted in Pennsylvania receiving $1 billion. The settlement resolved thousands of lawsuits against the companies for their role in fueling the opioid epidemic. In December 2019, Shapiro charged State Representative Muvata Johnson-Harrell with perjury and theft of funds from her supposedly non-profit charity On Such Things as Vacations and Clothing. In July 2021, Shapiro charged State Representative Margot L. Davidson with theft by deception, solicitation to hinder apprehension, and election code violations after stealing from the Commonwealth by filing fraudulent overnight per diem requests and various other expenses through the Pennsylvania House of Representatives Controller's Office as well as hindering a state prosecution. In August 2021, Shapiro settled the largest prevailing wage criminal case in U.S. history. Under the plea, Glenn O. Baker Incorporated paid nearly $21 million to 1,267 Pennsylvania workers. Shapiro joined several other state attorneys general in opposing President Donald Trump's travel ban, and also sued Trump to block the implementation of a rule that would have made it easier for employers to deny health insurance coverage of contraceptives. He also joined a lawsuit against ITT Technical Institute, a for-profit educational institute, that resulted in a $168 million settlement, with about $5 million of that going to Pennsylvania students. In 2018, he reached an agreement with federal officials to prevent the distribution of blueprints for 3D printed firearms. In 2019, he came out in support of the legalization of marijuana for recreational use by adults, joining Governor Tom Wolf and other leading Pennsylvania Democrats. 2022 gubernatorial campaign. Shapiro had long been expected to run for governor of Pennsylvania, and on October 13, 2021, he announced his candidacy in the 2022 election. In January 2022, Shapiro's campaign reported it had $13.4 million in campaign funds, which was described as a record amount for a candidate in an election year. Shapiro faced no opponents in the Democratic primary, and secured the nomination on May 17, 2022. He faced Republican nominee Doug Mastriano in the general election. Shapiro ran on a platform of protecting voting rights, abortion rights, and raising the minimum wage to $15 an hour. His campaign was criticized by some progressives because of his support for capital punishment for heinous crimes, his public feuds with Philadelphia District Attorney Larry Krasner, and his compromising with police unions to pass police reform bills. But efforts to enlist a progressive primary challenge to Shapiro were unsuccessful. Shapiro later changed his position, now saying he opposes capital punishment and would sign a bill to abolish it. During the lead-up to the primary election, Shapiro's campaign released a statewide televised advertisement calling a Mastriano win a win for what Donald Trump stands for, referencing Mastriano's stance on outlawing abortion and his efforts to audit the 2020 presidential election. The ad was seen as an endorsement of the Republican candidate Shapiro would want to face in the general election, with Mastriano seen as too extreme for swing voters to elect. Mastriano won the Republican primary and his closest opponent, former Congressman Lou Barletta, later said that Shapiro's ads likely helped. The impact of Shapiro's ads on the primary is disputed as Mastriano was already in the lead. Platform. Shapiro has said that as governor he will protect abortion access in Pennsylvania and veto any bill passed the state legislature passes that outlaws abortion. In contrast, Mastriano said he would support outlawing abortion in Pennsylvania without any exceptions, including in cases of rape or the mother's life being at risk. Before running for governor, Shapiro had supported capital punishment for what he called heinous crimes. During his campaign, he announced that he now favored abolishing the death penalty in Pennsylvania, a reversal of his previous position. Shapiro was asked in a 2022 interview with Pennsylvania Capital Star why his position changed, to which he responded, "Question is a fair one. When I ran for in 2016, I said that the death penalty should be reserved for the most heinous of crimes. But then I got elected Attorney General and I saw these cases come across my desk. I got closer to a system that I thought was in need of reform. And as Attorney General I never once sought the death penalty. As governor, I'd be in a policy-making role, together with the legislature, and I thought it was important when asked to state my position unequivocally that I would sign legislation to abolish the death penalty." Shapiro also said he would not sign any future death warrants for prisoners on death row. Shapiro supports cutting Pennsylvania's nearly 10% corporate tax rate to 4% by 2025. He has proposed hiring 2,000 additional police officers across Pennsylvania, saying, "The more police officers we hire, the more opportunities we have for them to get out of their patrol cars, walk the beat, learn the names of the kids in the communities." Shapiro favors pardoning those convicted for possession of small amount of marijuana. On efforts to mitigate COVID-19, Shapiro has broken with some in the Democratic Party and opposes mask and vaccine mandates. He prefers educating the public about vaccines' efficacy. Shapiro is also skeptical about Pennsylvania joining the Regional Greenhouse Gas Initiative, a market-based program to reduce some greenhouse gas emissions. He has proposed expanding Pennsylvania's clean energy portfolio for utility companies, greater electric car infrastructure and investing in clean energy research and development. Shapiro supports the Lifeline Scholarship Bill, which creates education savings accounts for children in failing public schools that can be spent on approved expenses including tutoring, instructional materials and private school tuition. Shapiro has proposed a plan that will allow for a $250 gas tax refund per personal passenger vehicle up to 4 vehicles per household. He proposed funding the proposal with funds from the American Rescue Plan. On the issue of vocational training, Shapiro has proposed increasing career and technical training in high schools, tripling state funding for apprenticeships and union skills programs, and creating a Pennsylvania Office of Workforce Development. He also supports eliminating 4-year degree requirements for state government jobs. Shapiro is a supporter of unions and has vowed to veto any right-to-work legislation. Endorsements and support. Before his announcement, term-limited Governor Tom Wolf endorsed Shapiro. He also received endorsements from former Governor Ed Rendell, State Senator Anthony H. Williams, former Pennsylvania Democratic Party Chair Marcel Groen, and the Planned Parenthood Action Fund. Additionally, he was endorsed by the SEIU Pennsylvania State Council, 4 SEIU local unions consisting of over 80,000 SEIU members in the state. In January 2022 the Pennsylvania Democratic Party endorsed him by voice vote. The committee also endorsed his preferred running mate, State Representative Austin Davis. Other union support included the Philadelphia Carpenters Union and Sheet Metal Workers, the Western Pennsylvania Laborers PAC, and the Electricians Union Local No. 5 in Pittsburgh. 8 former Republican officials, including former Pennsylvania Supreme Court Justice Sandra Schultz Newman and former Congressman Charlie Dent, as well as the sitting Republican chairman of the Lawrence County Board of Commissioners, Morgan Boyd, endorsed Shapiro, with several calling Mastriano extreme and divisive. 7 more former Republican officials, including former U.S. Secretary of Homeland Security Michael Chertoff, endorsed Shapiro in August 2022 for the same reason. Results. On November 8, 2022, Shapiro defeated Mastriano with 56.5% of the vote to Mastriano's 41.7%. Shapiro carried 17 counties. Governor of Pennsylvania, 2023. President Shapiro was sworn in on January 17, 2023, succeeding Governor Tom Wolf. He is the third Jewish governor in the history of Pennsylvania, after Milton Shapp, 1971 to 1979, and Ed Rendell, 2003 to 2011. He is also the state's first-generation ex-governor. Cabinet. In December 2022, during his transition to the governorship, it was reported that Shapiro tapped several of his longtime aides to serve in high-ranking positions, including naming his campaign manager Dana Fritz as his chief of staff. In January 2023, he appointed Akbar Hussain, an executive to his transition team, to be Secretary of Policy and named his longtime aide Mike Vereb to be Secretary of Legislative Affairs. Vereb served in that position until he resigned in late September after he was accused of making sexual comments to a female staffer. He was replaced by Thomas T. J. Yablonsky, a senior advisor in the governor's office. Shapiro's administration faced criticism after it was revealed Vereb had remained in his position months after the accusations were made. Shapiro defended his administration's actions, saying that an investigation into the allegations against Vereb is underway. He added, "Obviously these investigations, and again, I'm speaking generally, and I think it's really important that you understand that, these things don't happen overnight. They can be lengthy processes. But it's important, and I know this from my time as Attorney General advocating for victims, it's really important to make sure that everyone be heard and that the process be thorough and complete." Weeks later, Spotlight PA revealed that, 3 weeks before Vereb's resignation, Shapiro's administration had reached a settlement with Vereb's accusers that included a clause preventing all parties involved from publicly discussing its details. Economy. In 2023, Shapiro proposed raising Pennsylvania's minimum wage from $7.25 per hour to $15 and lowering corporate income taxes from 8.99% to 4.99% by 2026. By the end of 2023, Pennsylvania's credit rating had increased from AA to AA according to Standard & Poor, Fitch Ratings, and Moody's Investors Service. As governor, Shapiro said he has focused on expanding Pennsylvania's workforce. The day after his inauguration, he signed an executive order eliminating the 4-year college degree requirement for 92% of state government jobs. On July 31, he issued an executive order establishing the Commonwealth Workers' Transformation Program, CWTP, which provides grants to ensure that companies and contractors have the skilled workforce required. As part of the program, as much as $400 million could be used for workforce training in Pennsylvania until 2028. In August, Shapiro eliminated the college education requirement for state police cadets. In March 2024, he issued a directive increasing Pennsylvania's use of project labor agreements, PLAs. In May, he issued an executive order establishing the Hire, Improve, Recruit, Empower, HIRE, committee to attempt to fill in roughly 600 open positions in the state government. In February 2024, Shapiro unveiled his proposed $48.3 billion state budget for the 2024 and 2025 fiscal year, mostly consisting of funding public schools, public transit, higher education and infrastructure, with tax collections projected to increase by $1 billion. Critics argued that the budget would inflate the state's deficit to over $6 billion by 2028 and lead to large tax increases. Ultimately, Shapiro rolled back some of his proposals and signed a $47.6 billion budget in July. Education. During the drafting of Pennsylvania's state budget in mid-2023, Shapiro supported a Republican-led school choice proposal that would distribute $100 million to families for private school tuition instead of sending their children to public schools. He later dropped his support to avoid a protracted budget delay after Democrats in the state House refused to support it. The next year, Shapiro proposed a $1.1 billion boost for public school operations and instruction during the drafting of the 2024 budget, a 14% increase from the previous year. Through the 2024 budget, about $144 million would financially aid students, a roughly 33% increase, some through existing programs and some through new efforts. A new state board of higher education was established that created performance-based criteria for funding state-related universities. Transportation. In February 2023, Shapiro criticized the management of the Norfolk Southern Railway after it failed to contact Pennsylvania officials following the derailment of a train carrying harmful chemicals in Ohio. He called for the railway company to take a safer overall approach and called on the Pipeline and Hazardous Materials Safety Administration to revisit the need for more advanced safety and braking equipment in trains. On June 11, 2023, Shapiro issued a disaster emergency proclamation after part of Interstate 95 collapsed in Philadelphia. As much as $7 million in state funds were provided for reconstruction work. The proclamation also authorized the Pennsylvania Emergency Management Agency, the Pennsylvania Department of Transportation, and the Pennsylvania State Police to use available resources to respond to the collapse. Under Shapiro's leadership, the collapsed portion of I-95 was rebuilt in less than 2 weeks. Shapiro received praise for his response to the collapse. President Joe Biden said that Shapiro did one heck of a job in responding to the collapse. Minority Leader Brian J. O'Neill of the Philadelphia City Council said, "You couldn't ask for more from the governor." A Quinnipiac University poll found that 74% of statewide voters approved of Shapiro's handling of the crisis. Shapiro proposed investing $282.8 million, a 1.75% increase, in funding for public transit systems in the 2024 budget, which would generate $1.5 billion for transit funding until 2029. Immigration. In January and February 2024, the Republican-controlled state Senate urged Shapiro to send the Pennsylvania National Guard to the U.S. southern border to help Texas resolve the growing numbers of migrants entering the country, but he declined to do so. In March, after the Senate passed a resolution to send troops to the border, a spokesperson for the governor's office said that it was up to Congress, not Shapiro, to resolve the issue. Crime. Throughout his career, Shapiro has said he believes in second chances. In December 2023, he signed into law a bipartisan bill to restrict the kinds of activities that are considered violations of parole. At the bill signing ceremony, Shapiro stood next to rapper Meek Mill, who was sent to prison on a parole violation for doing a wheelie on a dirt bike. In his second month in office, Shapiro pledged to continue the pause on state-level executions Governor Wolf had maintained. He also called on the Pennsylvania General Assembly to abolish the death penalty. Israeli-Palestinian conflict. Shapiro, as a Zionist, has repeatedly voiced support for Israel in the Israel-Hamas war. He called on people and governments to condemn the 2023 Hamas-led attack on Israel, calling it a moment to recognize what is so clearly wrong, the acts of Hamas, and what is right, and that is Israel, our key ally's right to defend herself in the face of this barbarism. Shapiro faced criticism for his remarks in a letter written by CARE and signed by 43 Pennsylvania Muslim organizations, who said that Shapiro did not recognize the structural root causes of the conflict and chose to intentionally ignore the civilian loss of life in Gaza. On December 13, 2023, Shapiro gave more detailed remarks on the war, saying, "Israel not only has a right, they have a responsibility to rid the region of Hamas and the terror that Hamas can perpetrate." He called on the U.S. to help support the Israeli people once the battle is over in finding their footing again. After a pro-Palestinian protest accused Jewish-owned Philadelphia restaurant Goldie of supporting the genocide of Palestinians in the Gaza Strip, Shapiro visited the restaurant in a show of support against the blatant act of anti-Semitism. He also criticized University of Pennsylvania President Liz McGill for failure of leadership after she sidestepped questions during the 2023 United States Congress hearing on anti-Semitism. Shapiro condemned pro-Palestinian protests at American colleges after a prominent rabbi at Columbia University urged Jewish students to leave campus and said the university could not guarantee their safety. He called on local officials to step in and enforce the law to protect students. Shapiro called for a police crackdown on the pro-Palestinian encampment at the University of Pennsylvania, but later said he was already aware of police plans to disband the encampment after police made arrests less than 24 hours after Shapiro's statement. First Amendment advocates have criticized Shapiro over a revision to the state employees' code of conduct prohibiting scandalous behavior. Pro-Palestinian and Muslim groups raised concerns that the order was intended to chill speech related to the Israeli-Palestinian conflict. One First Amendment lawyer from Bryn Mawr called the regulation impossible to adhere to because it's impossible to understand what it applies to. Other issues. In August 2023, Shapiro announced his administration would end Pennsylvania's nearly 30-year contract with Real Alternatives, an anti-abortion nonprofit that funds anti-abortion counseling centers and maternity homes. Shapiro said he decided to end the contract in order to better defend abortion access in the state. On September 19, 2023, Shapiro announced Pennsylvania would enact automatic voter registration effective immediately. The process will include voter registration when voting-eligible persons receive their driver's licenses, with the choice to opt out. Shapiro condemned the attempted assassination of Donald Trump at a rally in Butler, Pennsylvania, where one rally-goer was killed by a stray bullet. Shapiro said the man died a hero protecting his family at the rally and ordered flags be flown at half-mast in his honor. Publications. Articles. We fixed I-95 in 12 days. Here are our lessons for U.S. infrastructure. The New York Times, July 17, 2023. Personal life. Shapiro met his wife, Lori, in 9th grade as they both attended Akiba Hebrew Academy, now Jack M. Barak Hebrew Academy, then in Marion Station. They dated in high school and reconnected after college while both were living in Washington, D.C. Shapiro proposed to her in Jerusalem in 1997. They married on May 25 of that year. Shapiro and his wife have 4 children and reside in the governor's residence in Harrisburg, Pennsylvania. Shapiro is an observant conservative Jew who keeps kosher. Electoral history.